Welcome to Wine Road, the wine, when, and where of Northern Sonoma County. I'm your host, Marcy Gordon, with Beth Costa, Executive Director of the Wine Road. Once again, our show is on the air through the generosity and support of Ron Rubin Winery. Ron Rubin specializes in Russian River Valley Chardonnay and Pinot Noir, wines that to me truly capture the essence of the region. Check out their website at ronrubinwinery.com. Welcome to episode 183. Today our guest is Erik Miller, and he is the owner and winemaker at Kokomo Winery. Welcome, Erik.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is the first time we've started a show. We actually have 3 bottles of wine open on the table.
Yeah, really, we're moving on up.
This is going to be a test.
This is amazing because let's get right into the wine. We've never had 3 open at once, but let's start with this beautiful Pet Nat. Tell us about this,
I told the
Erik.
ladies they can spit if they need to.
Yeah,
So
well,
just to be clear. But
we're ladies,
right.
so we don't spit.
right,
right.
okay.
Waste not, want not. Okay.
So, I started this new winemaking project. I started Kokomo in 2004. Right.
Wow.
And partnered with this 4th-generation farmer, Randy Peters, who's just phenomenal at what he does and happens to have some really good land to grow grapes on, which suits me very well. And in, I guess it was 2017, maybe I started to think about this project. As if I didn't have enough on my plate already making 16 varietals for Kokomo, I decided I would start a new brand. And what intrigued me about this new brand was the way that the wines would be made and the different style of winemaking. And I, as you always start a brand, you're like, what the heck am I going to call this thing? And
Right.
good luck with that, everybody.
I
because-
love always hearing the stories how the names do come to be.
Yeah,
That's cool.
well, the first thing is you think of a lot of cool names that are always taken, and you're like,
Yeah.
there's no way that's taken. How is that taken? But, if it's taken throughout any of the alcohol sectors at all, then it's taken. So anyway, the way I got this name is I was at, I was doing one of those rosé tastings with a big rosé tasting. And anyway, one of my idols from way back was there, Les Claypool, and and so Chris Sawyer had put this tasting on, and he's like, I think maybe I'm sitting next to Les Claypool, and he's like, Erik, get up and give a toast, and I'm never short of words, but I was kind of going like, I just kept that one short and sweet, and I said, just getting together and breaking bread, because we were having dinner after the tasting, and I got home that night and I said, that's my name, man.
That's it.
Breaking
That's
bread.
Well, it's so appropriate.
Yeah, well, that's, I think when you make food wines and, there's wines for all occasions, and you don't always have to have food with wine, but these wines specifically I kind of make thinking of, food and really even lighter cuisine, if you will. So,
This is amazingly good.
This is a natural wine project, and I make Kokomo very natural too. And so I always hate to say like, well, then what is Kokomo if it's not made natural? But the big difference is when I make these wines, we pick them less ripe, so they have higher acid.
Mm-hmm.
We don't add SO2 to the grapes when we bring them in, which is the first time I'd ever tried to do something like that, of bringing in grapes and not knocking down the stuff that comes in the vineyard, which is these could be spoilage yeast and any bacteria or whatnot, which SO2 is just amazing to do. And we've always used SO2 and, minimally, even with Kokomo. But so with Kokomo, I make a rosé and I sterile filter it because I don't want it to go through malactic. Well, that would knock it out of the natural category.
Right.
But
that's a knockout wine.
I was say, but that is a really amazingly great rosé. But
yeah, and so that's a Grenache. Thanks. That's a Grenache rosé, and I cold stabilize it too, and I heat stabilize it, right? And that just keeps it really clear. The cold stability is just turning the tank chiller on and letting the tartrates precipitate out in tank, so they don't do that in glass or in the glass bottle. And then the heat stability is finding the wine with bentonite, which is organic clay. But I will add everything that I make for Kokomo. Every single wine that we make for Kokomo and Breaking Bread is all native yeast.
Oh
yeah.
And it wasn't always that way, but in the last probably, 4 to 5 years, I've really went that way. And so, there's certain natural wine fairs that if you use native yeast, that's enough. But there's other ones that are like, it has to be unfined, unfiltered. And then there's the other big characterization of how do you farm? And is it
Right.
organic? And is it certified organic?
Right.
And that's a big piece too. So, we have a certified organic vineyard in Dry Creek. My wife and I, a 16-acre vineyard that my partner Randy farms. And And he farms organic too, but he just won't certify his stuff, being that he's fourth generation. He has a tough time with that.
Right. There's a lot of people who do that and don't go. It's a big process.
It's a big
to
paperwork
certify.
process and record
It is,
keeping.
and what I would
takes a long
say,
time.
you bring up the point of like, it's been in his land since his great-grandfather bought it. He definitely loves his land, but at the same time, you can imagine this third party coming onto the vineyard with a checklist, asking for a check to be certified A, B, or C. And the farmer's like, wait a minute, like you're coming on here to, and being a farmer your whole life is. So I think it's a little bit of a pride thing, and there's a little bit of something else to it. But I always, assure folks that the number one thing that generational farmers want is these farms to continue in their families.
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, it's a legacy.
And that doesn't work when you go and fumigate and spray a bunch of stuff. But, we went through a time when chemicals were better living. And in the 50s and 60s and 70s, it's like, why would we not use these things? Because we have them, and we're these humans that have these
Death rays.
Yeah, or, like we can do these things. Why not do them? And then we realize, like, we shouldn't
Maybe
do all
not.
that.
Maybe not in our best interest in the long run. Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
So tell us about this Pet Nat, the first one we're tasting here.
Okay, so...
Is that you on the label? Oh, no, I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's definitely got
hair day.
an interesting label to it. It's a hand-drawn rooster, which is a Polish top hat. But
it's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's kind of, you got to tell people what it is, and they go, okay, it is a rooster.
It's like, I woke up like this.
Yeah.
Right. A little bedhead. So anyway, Pet Nat, if those of you out there haven't heard of Pet Nat, it is a term that I didn't realize that wasn't even really invented or used until maybe the 90s. And the French started using this term Pet Nat, which stands for Pétillant Naturel. And it's a good marketing term, I think. But really, this is the method ancestral. And so this is a sparkling wine made in the ancient way. And a lot of natural wines, part of the category, doing orange wines and carbonic wines and Pet Nats, is a lot of just old school, very old winemaking.
Right up Marcy's alley.
This is my thing. I love natural wine. I love orange wine. I love Pet Nat because there's something about, there's an oomph to them.
And a liveliness, energy.
There's vitality.
Absolutely.
Not that other wines don't have it, but there's something particular about that category.
You're absolutely right. There's people that, kombucha-esque on some of these and so on. And, I try to make, so I think something to say is that if you make wines with your hands tied behind your back, which is what natural winemaking is, you better have some very sound fundamentals in winemaking because you can get bit. And I've been bit every year on at least one lot of wine from breaking bread where I've had to throw it in the compost, because I won't put out a wine that's not of, that's too high VA or a microbial mess in whatever way. But yeah, so you have to really use what we use is picking early. So we have acid as a natural preservative. With the reds, we use the stem in carbonic maceration, which the stem has a lot of really cool antimicrobial benefits. This Pet Nat, one of the things I was looking for some old vine dry farm stuff. I love that not only because of its organic kind of nature, but being in Dry Creek Valley, and pardon me, Alexander Valley and Russian River Valley neighbors, but we like to say in Dry Creek Valley that we make and are known to make the best Zinfandel in the entire world. And, I know our neighbors would say, oh, and they absolutely do make stunning Zinfandel in Alexander Valley and Russian River as well. But, of course, we all know Dry Creek is famous for
Dry Creek is, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And how could I not bring Zin into the conversation with the Natural Project? And more importantly, I wanted to make sure that these young people who are into natural wines, it happens to be a category that's really supports this movement, don't forget about Zinfandel. Right. Zinfandel's what brought us to the dance.
Right.
Like that's what we started with. And if you want to find some really cool vines, look at these old vines that are still in the ground, which are Zinfandel.
Yeah. Well, I've never had a Pet Nat of Zinfandel, and it's just like vibrant.
Yeah, it's really bright. This is really delicious.
Oh, thank you, hon. Well, first and foremost, I would say Zinfandel is so versatile, and I love to show its versatility. So you're drinking it in a sparkling format, and I do a rosé of it and a carbonic Zin and more of a classic. But this is 1962 planted dry farm head train
vines
that were actually, they're a little virused. and the vineyard didn't sell for a couple of years because it wasn't making the level of sugar that the winery wanted it for a big styles in. And I was like, this is actually perfect for what I'm doing because, I'm not promoting virus, but vines that have virus, they tend to get physiologically ripe at lower Brix of sugar because they start to shut down, they start to senesce, their leaves start to turn, and their seeds turn brown and lignified at lower Brix. And so you get these kind of riper characters, but still having that really nice bright acid that we want. So, when you pick sparkling, we always pick it at, in the teens, 18,
Early,
19. Yeah.
Well, this is a winner. Beth and I could definitely polish this off.
I was just thinking that's going home with me.
But
I'm pretty sure.
we have 2 more wines. So
Yeah.
let's get to this next wine that I
Okay,
just
cool.
poured a little bit. It is called Al Dente. Has the most awesome label again. And this is a red wine. What is the blend in this?
It is Mourvedre, and I just call it al dente. Al dente being, we know that from pasta not being fully cooked. And I kind of thought of this, the way I made it, as being of such. I mean, the
It's
breaking
got a
bread
little
name.
chew to it.
Yeah.
I love this.
Thank you. This is, we did something really cool in this one where we put it in a liter bottle. And I did that just, really marketing, but you get an extra glass. And we wanted people to know that this is like chillable and meant to be,
Yeah, it's definitely. You brought it chilled. Yeah.
Yeah, and I
so
think
good.
you can drink some of these reds with a slight chill on them. It may be a little too chilled, but I do like them. They're more refreshing that way, and
So flavorful. This just makes me think I'm on vacation.
cool. Well, this is 11.7 alcohol.
Oh, I
and
love it.
You're hard
that's
pressed to
great.
find whites
Yeah.
at 11.7
Right.
Yeah.
alcohol, let
No.
alone a red. And really one of the secrets and one of the keys to that is the stem. Once again, so. There's this thing called carbonic maceration, which doesn't really have anything to do with the stem except for that the berry's not been plucked off of it. So you get this CO2
Ferments in the grape.
in the grape. And that's a very lifted fruit forward style. So you're smelling that aromatically in this wine. But your grip that you tasted and part of the tannin that you get on the palate is the stem. But also very important, the stem has potassium. The potassium is released through fermentation and it shifts the pH. So it's kind of it's a way that you can get out of what I call searing acidity, because if I picked this and I destemmed it and I fermented it as such, all destemmed, and I had it side by side with this wine, you would go like, oh wow, they don't smell alike, they don't taste alike, and the acid would be completely different, the acidity on the palate.
So the higher pH, the smoother.
So it's, inversely correlated, the higher pH, the lower acid.
Right.
And so that potassium, when it comes in at 3.2 pH, will shift me up to 3.4, 3.5 pH. And then it turns that searing acid to like a crunchy acid, I call that.
It is a crunchy acid, and I love it.
Cool. Yeah. Something new, something different, and fun for me. I mean, when you're
Right.
not destemming and you're throwing all your grapes with no SO2 into a bin, I do add dry ice to keep, oxidation at bay, which is important. And that's a tool that we use. And the grapes are picked nice and cold, and you have to have good condition of grapes. Last year I got bit a little bit. We had that 116-degree heat wave that came through, and then we saw rain 10 days later. And we had open wounds on the berries, and then rain set in, and you got to have pristine fruit to really not add SO2 and to make wines in this natural way.
Before we started our podcast earlier, Marcy and I had watched the video that you have on your website for breakingbread.com and breakingbreadwines.com. And I loved in the video where you said if you don't have a few years experience of winemaking, that the natural wine thing is probably not in your best interest. A lot of things can go wrong.
Yeah, as a winemaker,
Yeah.
and I think that there's so many opinions around natural wine, and it's such a buzzword in our industry. Basically, the premise is, and just, this is our kind of definition of it, and I think most people's, is that you don't add anything to the grapes. So if you're using native yeast, but you're not adding enzymes, you're not adding bacteria, commercial bacteria, but you're also not adding tannins, you're not adding, concentrates. And there's a lot of things that started to get added to wines
Nice.
in the last, several years. And if you look at a book from Scott Labs and you see all the things that you could buy to add to your wine as a young winemaker, you sometimes feel like
gonna be so fun.
I'm missing the boat. I should be
Franken wine.
I should be
Like-
adding some of this stuff. And so, but the coolest thing about wine that other alcoholic beverages will never be able to compete with for the most part, is that we have native yeast on the grapes, and they will turn into wine with no ingredients. And if we help them along, they won't be vinegar and they'll be wine, but we don't have to add anything. And there's no way you can't do that with hops and wheat and barley and those grains that you make other alcohols with will just sit there as grains and never ferment into anything until you have human interaction and boil them and create a mash. And, it really takes that. But with wine, the coolest thing about it is how natural it can be. And I think that this movement is just going back to like raw, you know? Yeah.
Well, now the third wine we're tasting is a Cab Franc. It's a 2022.
This is one of those varietals, Cab Franc, that when you decide to pick, this is 12.7 alcohol once again. So if you decide to pick this lean, one of the characteristics that you're going to have, and that's going to be those green pyrazines, as we call them.
It's minty. It has that, definitely the pyrazine, but it also has that great savory nose on it.
When this thing was fermenting, it smelled like, I called it chili relleno, or like a pepper jack cheese. And it really had those pyrazines. And then as it continued to ferment, it really, now, when I call it out, you smell it like that. But it's now just a piece of it, and it's not so in your face with that. And part of that is, once again, the stem helping this out. This is a takeoff of Chinon, the region in France.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the finish on this is lovely. It makes you want another sip, and it makes you want another bite.
Yeah, food wine. And a bolder. This could get into some, whereas that al dente was more either porch pounder, if you will, or lighter vegetarian cuisine.
Right.
This Cab Franc, we could certainly get into some proteins.
Yeah.
So very cool. And, I brought these wines in because a lot of the podcast and what we're talking about is what's going on in tasting rooms and what we're doing and so on. And so this for us is what we decided to focus on was, I make a lot of varietals for Kokomo, 16 different grape varietals.
That's a lot.
So we have a lot of unique varietals open, always in the tasting room. But then we have this other style of wine, and we're starting to introduce this in our tasting room as well. We have kind of 3 to 4 different rooms in our winery, like a barrel room and an outside area and a couple different tasting rooms. So we always want to make sure that we're showcasing these wines as well. You may walk into a building that says Kokomo on the outside, but Breaking Bread will be there on the inside. And
What's great about this too is younger people are very much into the natural wine movement. And we do have in our industry, we need to keep young people engaged and get them into wine. Right. And so this is wonderful stepping stone to all the other wines. But, you can stay right on this stone and be very happy. But it gives a great range for someone coming in the tasting room. There's something for everybody's palate they're really going to enjoy.
Yeah, I think it's interesting as younger people go, like if they're into some kind of new music, then we're always like, as older folks, we're like, oh, that's the young people doing that.
I love you saying older folks.
Older, Erik.
I might be, but
I'm getting up there too,
You
mid-40s.
don't look like you qualify.
That's cute.
But,
we're fermenting well.
Apparently.
Yeah, we're being preserved well. We're talking about how do we get young people into wine.
Yeah.
And we know what they're into, but at the same time, we have a lot of people that just don't want to grasp what's going on in this natural world. And it's and you just can't throw a big broad stroke and say that they're all flawed, because there's a lot of really cool natural projects out there that aren't necessarily flawed that are. I will bring this up, and I don't do this because this was a little bit of a slap in the face, I thought, when Randy first said this to me, but I've actually come to embrace it a little bit. So I'm like, dude, I'm going to start this new project and I'm really excited about it. And it's these low alcohol wines that I'm going to, do carbonically on the red and the reds, and they'll be, chillable. And I'm so excited, and I'm explaining all this to Randy Peters, the fourth-generation farmer, right? And he's been in the industry, his whole life. And he looks at me with this look, and he says, you know what? It kind of sounds like Dad drinking Carlo Rossi with an ice cube.
Well,
and I was like, oh, no, this isn't that. And then as I thought about it, I'm like, well, I mean, those were the really light style wines back in the day, and certainly probably made more in a commercial way than what we make Breaking Bread, no doubt. But did we not lose the fact that I call it, did we got Parkerized is the term, where we all went big and rich and ripe, but a lot of wineries quit making quaffable, lighter style wines but that doesn't mean that you can't like both.
I
that's
think
true.
the thing is, to me, it's
That's
both.
true. It is
because
true.
to me, like a really great cab is still well worth having
That
for
is
dinner.
true.
A really great cab. But then
No
on the
doubt.
other hand, I love this al dente, chilled like this. Like this is living here where the summer's so
This is
hot.
like
this is like a perfect red
A
to sit
Peter
on.
Sellers movie in the 60s, because it's so happening and it's like it's
happening.
swinging, but it's of just the 60s vibe. And but there's something about this that's just fresh and new and exciting. And I
feel
think
that
you
way, too.
capture that.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. No, I feel that way too. And then you've mentioned it too a couple of times, like the labels.
The labels
Yeah.
are so fun.
Speaking of labels, so Erik brought us some stickers, and they're just awesome. So what would you say? These are homage to classic rock bands.
Yes.
And so, Beth, here we have a Cab Sauvignon. What band is that? We're going to test
Is
her
that Led
knowledge.
Zeppelin?
Led Zeppelin. Give the woman
All
ding, 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 ding.
right. Ding, ding.
Now we have this
I'm
awesome
not gonna know.
Chardonnay, and I will put these.
Chicago.
I will put these.
That's,
This woman knows her
Wow.
typography. Okay, I bet you won't know this one. This Grenache. I'm going to put these on the website with our
It's
show
like
notes.
Green
too.
Day or something. I don't know.
That one's the Clash.
The Clash.
Oh, the Clash.
This you would know for sure.
No,
This-
I don't know.
Come
I
on,
don't know.
it's in the first name.
It's not Prince. No.
No,
I don't know.
it's
Floyd.
Yeah, Pink
Oh,
Floyd.
Pink Floyd.
Kind of the Wall.
from the
See,
Wall.
yeah, the Wall.
And then this one, I'm not sure I know this one.
Yeah, that one is a punk rock band called the Misfits,
Ah,
and it says Merlot.
these are so cool.
And I just have fun with them. Another to throw Randy in here. He saw the receipt for this or whatever because he's
like,
the guy
"What are
always
you
thumbing
doing?"
through. And he's like, "So why did you spend $1,200 on stickers?" And I says, "Well, because they're really cool." And he's like, "What are you gonna do with them?" And I'm like, "I'm gonna give them away." And he's like, "You spent $1,200 to give them away?" And I'm like, "Yeah, man." I named my winery Kokomo after my hometown of Kokomo, Indiana. Kokomo, Indiana is a blue collar factory town, and there's certainly no pretension in Kokomo. But I had to, because I named my winery after my hometown, that's a blue collar town, I had to kind of follow suit with that as far as the look of the winery. It definitely didn't need any crystal chandeliers or anything that was like overly fancy. It needed to keep this kind of barnwood, earthy vibe in there because, people would come in from Indiana and say, you named it Kokomo and it looks like this. But anyway, love my hometown. But so we have fun, and wine doesn't have to be pretentious. But at the same time, it's a noble beverage, and we're dead serious about farming and the way that we make wines. But you can
Absolutely,
have some
but
fun
this
with
is
it.
also a way of connecting with your audience.
Well, people
and
will just love that. It's just
it's
just fun.
It's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. I'm glad you guys like them. So
Totally.
They're totally great. We'll have to Rochambeau to see who's taking home one.
He brought a whole bunch.
Okay.
$1,200 worth.
I don't know, but yeah, we brought some anyway.
Tell Randy the stickers went to good use.
For us, I think when you come to Kokomo, it's not about the pairing. It's not about taking a tour on an ATV or on a gondola up a hill or whatever it may be. It's really going to be about a lot of cool wines that have we have a lot of varietals we make and different styles, and hopefully, coming, at around harvest, you'll see us making wine and really kind of feel the smells and the vibe.
The whole
of
energy of
That's
it.
the most exciting time
That's what
of year.
people want, I think,
Yeah.
so much of. And there definitely are some amazing food pairings that you can go to. But as a visitor, if you only have a day or two or even 3 days, you don't want 6 food pairings. I mean, so you do need a variety. And I think I talked to a lot of people asking, should they come in September or October? Is that a good time to come? It's like, that is the prime time to come because you'll see gondolas with grapes coming in. You'll smell the grapes
smell
and the
of
fruit.
harvest
It's just
is like
amazing.
nothing
And the
else.
energy. And if they go to Kokomo and they can see that happening in the background, the winemaking, that's an experience that you'll just never forget.
I say the same thing, Beth. I'm on the road a lot. I travel in the spring, kind of promoting my wines and so on in different states. And everyone's like, what's the best time to come? And I would say harvest. And they would look at me like, well, you're so busy at that time. And I'm like,
But that's when you want to be a part of it.
I'm like, but there is, particularly
The
for these
energy.
people that are somms or in the industry,
right.
I'm like, have you ever eaten a cabberry.
Right.
Do you realize that a Zinfandel cluster is like 5 times the size of a Pinot Noir cluster? Like,
Yeah, just seeing the clusters is like amazing. You would never think how different they really look. I mean, it's like a lineup.
And taste.
Yeah, exactly.
And
but
I
just
love
the look
that
of
where
them
you
is
taste
incredible.
Malbec and you go, wow, it's got this interesting zinny character. It's not like the other Bordeaux varietals. And I tell people I get to know these varietals as a grape. And I think that people would be a lot less pretentious about wine if they knew that these fancy French names like Pinot Noir and Cabernet Sauvignon and all these names are just names of varietals.
Right.
Because we certainly don't feel like that these fancy names for apples make them intimidating. It's just kind of, the new name for an apple, but we keep with these classic names for grapes, but they are just varietal names.
Exactly.
So
when people come to the tasting, you were saying you don't really do like a food experience, but you do your famous fried chicken.
We do birds and bubbles.
Birds and bubbles.
And I think you've been once.
I have been a couple times.
Yeah, cool.
Because I'm a aficionado
birds
of the
and
bubbles.
That's right.
Yeah, and I do this pet nat there as well. I do our traditional sparkling.
I was just going to say, this
Blanc,
must be incredible with the fried chicken.
It's a cool thing. I was in North Carolina on one of these sales trips, and that's where I got inspired by this whole event where we were, had a free day, and it was just beautiful in the mountains of the Blue Ridge Parkway. And my distributor was like, okay, we're going to go get this fried chicken. And she shows up at this gas station, and the fried chicken was being fried in the back of the gas station.
That's awesome.
And we bring it out, and the guy's like, "Don't you cover that up? It's going to get the chicken soggy. You got to keep it open." And anyway, he was really proud about it. So I was well, that's one good sign that it came out of the back of a gas station. But he's very proud about his chicken, so we feel good. And so then we went up to this mountaintop, and we had champagne and grower champagne and really cool bubbles and fried chicken. And I was like, "This is just so Kokomo.
Living the dream."
Like, our most fancy wine we do, our Blanc de Blanc. Sparkling, method champenois paired with fried chicken, which sounds very Kokomo.
I've been to that event with you once, and it was just so memorable. It was, and because you're in the vineyard,
the setting, everything about it, you're like, this is magic.
Super dynamic.
It is. We're at Timbercrest Farms, and it's at 4791 Dry Creek Road. It's a 120-acre vineyard on the East Bench, and it is spectacular. The Walton Spills have owned that piece of land since the 50s, and it's just really, really a cool spot. We have awesome neighbors like Papa Pietro Perry and Amphora and Peterson Winery.
Yeah, you great little cluster there.
And so we got a cool little cluster up there. They used to, people would call us different things. We had a tasting room up there at one time called Family Wineries, and people would just call us that. And we're like, no.
Yeah,
it's important that you call it Timbercrest Farms because that's what I put on my label, and I make so much wine from that vineyard, and we want people to know that Timbercrest is this 120-acre vineyard. But anyway, my partner Randy Peters planted every vine on the property and was managed all those vineyards for years, and he's just managing his own vineyards, which is Pauline's vineyard and Peter's vineyard and my wife and I's vineyard, Mazzani vineyard. But he still has his mentor Joaquin that takes care of Timbercrest and the 100 acres in Alexander Valley that we call Ruth's Vineyard. And so it's just cool for me. I kind of feel, you pinch yourself sometimes. You come out here from Kokomo, Indiana, and you land in this spot where you got a tasting room on Dry Creek Road, and you get to make all these cool grapes into wine, and it's
that's why people should watch the video on the breakingbreadwines.com. That video is so great, and the end of it, and just the scenery and the whole story. It's really well done.
And incorporates your philosophy so well. Yeah, it's a great video. So in the show notes, we'll put a link to that. Well, the best way to reach you is through the website, I would assume, or
yes, give us a call or the website, and that has our phone number on it. But yes, that's always the easiest.
And does Kokomo? Can you do walk-in tasting at this point?
Absolutely,
if you have space.
Yeah, I love appointments, and so it's kind of cool. You'll start the day out, and you go, like, how many appointments do we have? And it kind of lets you know what the day's going to be like. But it really doesn't. And you love those walk-ins. And I have to remind our people in the tasting room, like 2 years ago, there was no appointments.
Yeah.
And you had no idea if you had a big group or anybody or nobody. And so, but we always want to make wine tasting, and I was listening to one of your podcasts earlier, before, and you were talking about, you're at a winery and then you hear other people talking about a wine or the person at the winery recommends it. And I'm that type of traveler too. I hate to have like every single minute of my
Yeah, it's hard.
itinerary planned out. You want to have a little bit of
A little spontaneity.
yes, absolutely.
Definitely.
Yeah.
That's always the case.
Always good.
Totally side note, unrelated to wine, but I have a son that just moved to Indianapolis, Indiana.
Oh, Indiana, what a great place to be from. And
Yeah.
and I go back every year. I do a fundraiser in Kokomo.
That's what I'm thinking.
and
Now I have to vacation in Indianapolis.
It's there's the 500, which is really
I know.
cool.
Yeah.
No, it's the people in Indiana are awesome. I went to Purdue University,
Nice.
and I do a collaboration with them, with the Purdue Alumni Association.
Oh, cool.
And we release a wine called the Boilermaker Blend.
Oh,
But
that's
they've
cool.
just been so supportive. And it's just, we get this Indiana contingency that
I'm sure.
comes out, and
Yeah.
you're like, okay, how'd you? And they're like, oh, I was doing a, retreat or whatever in San Jose, and I drove all the way here because I had to see the place.
Kokomo.
And
Yeah.
it's so cool,
Right.
But so we do like to treat our Hoosier folks that come, with a little extra
Nice.
something if we can. And
So if you're out there listening,
Yeah.
Kokomo
Right.
is for you.
That's the place.
But we like to treat everybody. I think, one of the main things, what we pride ourselves on is hospitality.
You guys are the master of it.
I
I mean, I always feel that way. I never pop in, certainly with a reservation. I just pop in when I pop in, and I don't know half the people that work in there. They don't know me, but I'm treated amazingly.
I'm
love
glad to
going
hear
there.
that. I'm glad to hear that. And we get a lot of cool reviews that way. And, that is all. We've had Ross James for 12 years with us, and he is the guru of hospitality
definitely
and
is.
has taught us all
Yeah.
what that means. And I
Right.
love his definition, which is hospitality is the way you make somebody feel
Right.
when they come in. And it's like, it's that simple, really, but so important.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a bonus when I show up and Ross happens to be there. I'm like, oh, score.
Right. Everyone says that.
So let's see. I don't know what else I have to talk about. I should, before we wrap things up, I should mention that we have a Never a Dull Moment at the Wine Road office. We have tickets on sale for 2 different events. We have the Fall Wine Trail, which is new for us. It's a one-day event, September 23rd. It's $50 a person. You can go to wineroad.com and just click on Fall Wine Trail. And we're all now also selling tickets for the Wine and Food Affair, which is November 4th and 5th.
We're in.
So I'm super excited about it. I mean, I feel like we're kind of back to doing fun food events, and I'm excited. Can you tell?
I mean,
I'm exhausted and excited.
Wine Road's events have always been, so key for our industry because they, bring us new faces,
So
but
it's
they
new people. Yeah.
and they come at a time, particularly Winter Wineland. But it's one of those things where you dress it all up, right? You put you change out the
Let's look
cellar, you
forward.
bring in a caterer. So on those events, I love to showcase our wine with food.
Yeah.
And that's when we do
Right.
it. We do it during Wine Road events.
Right.
And that's when we, for Winter Wineland, we have food. Of course, for Wine and Food Affair, we have food. And for all those Wine Road events. And that's so fun and such a kind of continuity that we get amongst all the wineries, that do that because it's, it's Russian River, it's Dry Creek Valley, and it's Alexander Valley, man. It's the heart of, and nothing against, Sonoma Valley or any of the other Fountain Grove AVA, which is where I live,
Oh my gosh.
all those different,
There's so many.
There's so many now.
AVAs, but like those 3 for me, and we have vineyards in all 3.
Right.
And I love, when I'm back in Indiana, for instance, and you try to tell people about these microclimates that we have, it's so tough for them to realize that not only would we have complete different temperature right over this ridge, but also the soil types are so varied. We have more soil types in Sonoma County than all of France combined.
Right. The
Definitely.
diversity is mind-blowing in every way. Yeah. If we have a minute, we should mention one more thing. We should talk about the newest article written by our very own wine writer extraordinaire, Marcy Gordon. You want to tell us?
All right. So my claim to fame today. So in the current issue of Wine Enthusiast, the August, September. So by the time you hear this, I think it will still be on the newsstands. I have a story in the very back called The Last Drop. And it's an excerpt from my memoir, Living in Italy memoir. And I hope you'll pick it up and read it. And thanks for mentioning that, Beth.
And then someday the memoir will be out and you can read that, because I've known Marcy for years, but I never knew where her real intense wine knowledge came from. And then the book made it so clear. And that's the beginning of it.
Yeah, it started in Italy. So it's really about how I became acquainted with wine and started my wine journey.
We all have a way and a time.
Yeah, there's definitely stories, all different stories.
Thanks, Beth. But if it's still on the newsstands when you're, buy a copy.
Yeah, there you go.
So cool.
All righty. I think that's it. Anything else, Erik?
No, I just want to thank you guys for having me. So cool to be here in the studio. And thank you guys all for all the things that you do for all of us wineries and the wine industry.
Well, thanks for 3 bottles of wine today.
Yeah, you brought the goods, Erik. Thank you. All righty. We'll see you on the wine road.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.